Me and B-Rob are super close. Lockers right next to each other, so I get to see him. I get to be around him all the time, and then obviously on the field. But B-Rob's someone I've been cool with since I first got here. Someone who's from Tuscaloosa, who has been in the program for a while. And when I first got here, he was someone who was always super cool with me. Someone who was super welcoming when I was just a freshman. That means a lot to me. For him, last year being here as long as he did, he didn't have to go out of his way to make sure I was good and to look out for me as just a freshman. But he made a priority to do that, and that's always meant a lot for me. Not just in football but in life.
It means everything is so much fun. I have to give those guys a lot of credit because they give me so much energy when I watch them play. Before the game, I swear I always say to myself, I said, your brother's out there with you. Look at Phil, he right there beside you. Look at DJ, he right there beside you. Look at Dallas, he right there beside you. So we straight no matter what, and that kind of gives me a little bit of confidence too.
You're listening to Bama Brigade on the Sports Flash Media Network.
Tyler, I see you smirking. What are you smirking at?
I didn't watch it before, and so that was the first time I saw it.
Yeah, the voiceover, the voiceover.
Hey, listen,
it could use a little work, but it's okay.
No, yeah, the whole video could use a little bit of work, but obviously it's a work in progress. I think so far it's pretty good. Yeah, the voiceover was questionable, but welcome into our Wednesday, September 21st edition of the Sports Flash Media Network. We got Bama Brigade. Tonight's show we'll be discussing the Week 4 college football games. I'm joined by my co-hosts Tyler Shibish and Josh Clacker. Tyler, how are you doing? I forgot the L in your name, Clack. I need to keep.
Yeah, I know. That. You always forget the L in Clack's name, which is kind of surprising considering how many he takes.
For sure.
I made that same joke the last time you did it. But I'm good. How you doing?
I'm good. Can't complain too much. It's hump day, so almost to the week. Clack, how you doing?
I'm great. I'm ready for some college football this weekend. Finally going to be in Tuscaloosa for a full day and not just for the game. Going to go tailgate, have some beers,
have a couple brewskis.
Yeah, didn't only made it for the game last time, but going to make the whole thing of a jiggy this time.
Why didn't you make it into the game?
I made it to the game last time, but y'all may get some drunk texts around 3:00 in the group saying some drunk hot takes. So
can't wait for Vanderbilt to score 7 when we're up 40 points and hear about how bad Pete Golding is.
I'll be sober by game time. Just be ready for some hot takes.
You're usually saying stupid stuff on game day.
After I have
think the alcohol
have one Miller Lite, and I'll be down for the count for the rest of the day. So.
See, I don't even think you're kidding. I think you're being completely honest. That's the scary
part. I mean,
part.
we all know what happened that night we had the draft party. We won't go there. That's FW content. But
let's get into some college football instead. We'll start off with college football news before we have a guest coming on at 7:10, and then obviously we'll break down the matchups for the week. So Arizona State fired head coach Herm Edwards literally right after the game. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw the clip. He's walking past midfield, and the athletic director signals him over, and I think somebody else as well. What do you guys think about that? I mean, I love Herm Edwards as just he's like a meme, and I think he's a good coach. He's been a good coach in the past, but I think his best coaching days are behind him.
Yeah, I mean, they're 1-2 in the season. They lost to Eastern Michigan, which should not be happening for Arizona State. They had one good player and he left them because Arizona State's kind of disappointing. I mean, I'm a huge Jaden Daniels fan, so take that with a grain of salt. But
it's just the Pac. They've become the Pac-12's Vanderbilt. I mean the Pac-12 is full of Vanderbilts anyway. But
I think it's hard to recruit for Arizona State. I mean, you're trying to keep up with the likes of USC now. Who seems like they're back on the map as far as recruiting. You got Oregon. I mean, a lot of other schools in that conference players would much rather go to. I feel like Arizona State is just at the bottom of the barrel.
See, it's funny, though, because I feel like Arizona State has a really easy sell in that, Arizona State is probably the most notorious party school in the entire nation. I feel like you should at least be able to pick up some recruits because of that, right?
If those are the recruits you're picking up, though, are those the recruits you want to play?
Obviously what they're doing ain't working, so let's go get the Ajay Halls of the world or something.
It feels like 110 degrees on a cool day in Arizona. I was in that area earlier a couple months ago, and On
Give
a
us the
cool
weather
day
report.
at 10 o'clock at night, it feels like 110 degrees. Who wants to go play in that? That's a tough sell to go play in 110-degree heat all
Except
the time.
Bama's really hot too, and they have the best.
Yeah,
I mean,
Texas.
not quite as hot, but like
Bama is nothing compared. It's a dry, awful heat over there. It's nothing compared to what the heat we have over here. I mean, it makes what we have is cold compared to what they have. So I mean, who wants to go play in that?
All right. Nobody wants to hear us talk about the weather. Let's move on to something else. So I haven't actually got the chance to look at this article yet, but one of you, I think Clark put it in here, proposed college football calendar, which would move college football up earlier. Clark, do you want to tell us about that?
Basically, the gist of that is, the week 0 that we've had the last 2 years is there has to be a waiver signed for you to be able to even play in a week 0 game. Like that's kind of a big to do to be able to play in a week 0. They're wanting to make that a week 0 a permanent thing for everybody, basically, where everyone starts in week 0 like we did in week 1. So everyone starts in week 0. So they're wanting to move it back a week or so earlier and have everything be a week earlier. So like the SEC championship would be the week the Iron Bowl is, and Natty would be, the week the CFB is.
I have a question then. So then is there going to be another week 0 that's a week earlier than the week 0, and there's still going to be a week 0?
That's still like all in the works, but they're just wanting to move it back a week for some odd reason. Who knows why?
I mean, if everyone plays week 0, nobody does, right? It's week 1 instead.
Yeah, I've never been. Obviously, it's football, like extra week early, but the whole week 0 thing never really made all that much sense to me. So I'm interested to see what they'll do with this. Got our guest coming on in a couple minutes, so let's just kind of get through these last 2 things. Jalen Hall commits to Alabama over Hale. Sorry, I'm blind. Jalen Hale commits to Alabama over Texas and Texas A&M.
Did you see the way he committed?
Yeah, he had like the necklaces,
like the iced out chains.
Yeah, I put a video of it in here, but we're already behind on time per usual, so unfortunately I can't play it. But yeah, that was a crazy way to announce his recruitment. I think over the years we've seen a lot of crazy recruitments, but I've never seen anybody choose where they're going to school by necklace. That was very odd.
Honestly, I thought it kind of took away from the hype a little bit. Like it was unique, right? But they had to like stand there and like fiddle with the clasp and try to open the Alabama one. And it's like, okay, well,
if that was me, I would literally be like, ugh. Like I would.
I know, but like with hats and stuff, right? Like you just pick it up and put it on. Everyone's like, ah! Like with the chain, he like picks up the chain, and then his like dad or whoever that was comes over and starts helping him like undo the clasp and put it around his neck. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. To me, it was like it's really unique and it was definitely cool. But it kind of takes away from like the shock factor of picking your team, right? So,
all right, last bullet point: TJ Finley out for Auburn versus Missouri. They still have yet to post his final score of the Penn State game. Do you guys think Auburn will hold up without Finley? They didn't look too great on Saturday against Penn State.
Let's be real. I think there's some Division III teams that could beat Missouri. So yeah,
I actually picked Missouri to win that one.
Oh,
both of you guys picked Auburn to beat Penn State, so.
Yeah, I know. And then I realized that Auburn is actually bad. I was thinking that they would have the voodoo. I didn't realize I was not a believer in how bad they were this year until that game. And now I'm a believer that they're not that good. Honestly, though, now that I'm hearing that TJ Finley's out, because I didn't know that when I picked them, or when I picked Missouri, I think they might have a better chance to win without him because, one of those weird things, right?
All right, we've got our guest hopping in here. Tonight we're joined by the host of Not Another College Football Podcast and someone who is a true college football junkie. I'd like to welcome Potato Gobbler to the show. PG, how are you doing on this Wednesday hump day, and why the hell is that your Twitter name?
Man, it's a long story, and I can get into it if you really want to hear it, but I'm feeling great. Honored to be on the podcast, excited to talk some college football with you guys. Like you said, I'm kind of a college football guy. I've dipped a little bit into the NFL this year, but I haven't done great in that. So college football is kind of my bread and butter. So I'm excited to get down to business.
For sure. I know you're an Oklahoma Sooners fan. Obviously, you got that flag in the background. So I'm going to start off by asking you a few questions about the Sooners. What were your thoughts when Oklahoma decided to go out and get Brett Venables after Lincoln kind of ditched town? Have your thoughts changed since the hire, or are you kind of just thinking the same?
No, man, if anything, I'm more on board with the hire. I think at first I think at first it was a little bit of question marks because obviously this is his first head coaching job. But if you look at the history of Oklahoma, a lot of our coaches, this has been their first coaching job. Bob Stoops, notably. I think Barry Switzer, same story. So I'm excited that he's in town. I think it was the right hire as of right now. I obviously was at the Nebraska game last week. We absolutely dominated, looked great. I love the way the team's playing together. And it looks more, especially defensively, like a more fundamental team that's a little bit better coached. And there's a ton of the team is just so connected and gelled already, it feels like. So we'll see what the rest of the season looks like. But as of right now, I'm a huge fan of this Brent Venables hire. He's got a different state of mind than our last coach did. Obviously, he's more of a defensive guy. Lincoln Riley was an offensive guy. But I love this defensive mentality this team has kind of embraced. And so far, so good. I'm on board.
Go ahead, Clark.
So when you look at college football right now, it's obviously Georgia, but then long way than anybody else. Is there anybody even close to being as good as Georgia right now?
Are you baiting him, Clark?
This is a bit of a bait, but I'm going to take it because I think there's actually two teams that could compete with Georgia this year, and it's going to take some development along the way. Now, that's not – if these teams played Georgia tomorrow, I don't like their chances. But since we've got several weeks until this college football playoff, I like two teams. I like Bama, and I like Ohio State. I'll talk about Ohio State first because I think they're a team that offense is finally starting to click. I'm a big C.J. Stroud guy. He was my Heisman pick coming in. And that's only because they don't like to give the same guy the trophy 2 times. We all know that. They hate giving that trophy out twice. So I love this offense that CJ Stroud and them got. I think the defense has gotten better. They obviously hired a better defensive coach this year coming in. They've got some development to do still. They haven't exactly been tested against the highest level. They had the game against Notre Dame that was kind of a struggle. And obviously Notre Dame's turned out to not be great. But I think as the year progresses, we'll see Ohio State go to. The interesting one in their division is Michigan because that's obviously going to be a big game, and Michigan looks good too. So that'll be the kind of decider. And then my other team is Bama. I love what they're doing. My only concern with Bama, they still have all these guys. I know they didn't look as great against Texas as you might want them to, but they still won the game at the end of the day in a hostile environment. And I could see I've seen Texas play this way before because I'm an OU fan. They can have the worst year ever, but if they get up for a game, they've got enough talent they can give anybody a push. I still think Bama's a pretty darn good team. My biggest concern is Bill O'Brien. I'm not a Bill O'Brien guy, and you guys, I'm sure, can tell me. I was going to say, I'm sure you guys can tell me all about it as Bama fans, but I've never been a huge fan of his, and it seems that his offense is starting out kind of a little clunky right now. But I think they'll get it figured out. They've got enough talent on this team. So those are the two teams I think could compete with Georgia this year.
We are hoping that Bill O'Brien goes to Nebraska. I know his name's been linked to that job. So
I saw that.
Every Bama fan I know is hoping for that to happen because we despise the way he calls plays.
Yeah.
Right. That's absolutely the dream. I see on the back you have a little OU to the SEC sign. And so I was just kind of wondering, like, when that first got announced, what were your thoughts? And then after seeing, 3 games in with Brent Venables, seeing how he kind of has shifted to more of a defensive mindset, do you think that fits in better with the SEC identity, or do you think that Lincoln Riley would have been a better coach for that?
Yeah, so it's been a wave of kind of up and down. So at first, when I first heard it, obviously I was excited because I felt like, we've kind of conquered the Big 12 and it's not gotten us anywhere. We're losing recruits because we don't play in the SEC, and we can't say, like, look at all these guys that got drafted on defense. Look at the guys that got drafted in the defense last year in Big 12. There were hardly any. There was a few OU guys, but it's just different in the SEC, as you guys know. So I was kind of excited because I think that's the next step for our program. If we really want to keep competing on that college football playoff level, we've got to be able to recruit at that level. And I don't think we could have done that without being in the SEC. And then immediately after that, Lincoln Riley leaves. And then I'm like, this is a disaster. Like, we're going to have to go to the SEC, and we don't even have a coach right now. And so then Brent Venables comes along, and I'm a little bit hesitant, but I know we've got some time before it takes off. But now that I've seen that it's more of a defensive team and it's not just this flashy, we're going to outscore everybody style, I like our chances a little bit better in the SEC, but it's still a step up. We've seen this 2023 class for OU. The recruiting class looks a lot more like an SEC recruiting class. So as long as that keeps happening in the future, I think OU will be in a great spot in the SEC, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait. All these new stadiums, all these new teams that we get to travel to. I mean, if the worst one's Vanderbilt in Nashville, I mean, at least Nashville's really fun. Like, I can't wait. We're really excited just for something different, if anything else.
I think we all expected Oklahoma to be good on defensive side of the ball, bringing in Brett Venables. But what I've been surprised with is offensively. UCF transfer Dylan Gabriel has accounted for 9 touchdowns and 0 picks through the first 3 games. Can you put into words just the impact he's had on the team?
Yeah, and so his impact goes further than on the field. I honestly think on the field is probably one of his lesser attributes that he's given to this team. His leadership is really what's exceptional. He comes from Hawaii. He spent some time as the starter at UCF and had some good numbers under Jeff Lebby, which I think is a big thing too. You know, getting him from Ole Miss, he's looked really sharp so far. I like his offense and his play calling style. But yeah, Dylan Gabriel, man, the best thing he's done on field is just not turn the ball over. He's not, as I had some conversations in the stands with some OU fans up there in Nebraska. And one of the things we said immediately was like, he's obviously not Kyler or Baker in terms of like an arm talent, but this guy's got all those intangibles that those guys had. He's a great leader. He doesn't turn the ball over. And I think we've got enough talent on offense. We'll keep rolling and we'll see how far he can take us. I don't know that it's a national title or anything like that right now, but he's a great piece. And I think he's getting better every week.
What are your thoughts on the Brian Harsin situation at Auburn? It only gets weirder after every loss.
Yeah, that dude. I know Auburn has an interesting culture, but first of all, that hire really never fit real well with me. Obviously, he did pretty well with Boise State, but Boise State was a program that was already above everyone else in the Mountain West. So all he had to do was just keep it going, right? He didn't have to like go out and make Boise State from nothing to something. It was already on the upward trajectory, and he just kind of kept that going. I think it was a bit of a speculative hire because he's a little bit younger guy, but bringing a guy all the way up there from the Mountain West into SEC country, man, that's tough because you guys know as well as anybody, recruiting is so hard when you're going up against Georgia and Bama for everybody. And their coaches can go, not only are we a better team than Auburn, we put more guys in the NFL than Auburn does, and Auburn's just got a new coach. So why would you go there? So Harsin, I don't even know if he ever had a really fair shot with Auburn, but at the same time, I'm not sure that was the right hire, and I think he's obviously pretty gone by the end of this year.
So you're self-proclaimed college football junkie. 3 games in, I want to get your thoughts. What do you think most overrated, most underrated teams in the nation are right now?
Yeah, okay. I like where we're going with this. Okay, so I think one of the most underrated teams might be Michigan. Not enough people. I know Michigan's up there in the top 5, 4, wherever they're at. Some people have them in and out. But I really think that they compete with Ohio State this year. They obviously whooped Ohio State last year. But I think it's a team that no one's taken seriously enough. This is a team that's well built. They're very good on defense. They finally figured out their quarterback situation, in my opinion. They picked the right guy. We'll see. They've got a great running back in Blake Corum. They play big boy football, and I think that will translate well if they do get to the playoff again. Obviously, last year they got tripped up pretty quick, and it didn't look like they really were at that level. But I would love to see where they're at this year. I think that's a bit of an underrated team. And at this point now, most overrated team for me, probably Texas A&M. I know they have a ton of talent on that roster, but I just do not like anything about it. Jimbo Fisher's offense is dead. It just doesn't look good. He hasn't figured out his quarterback situation at all. And here's the part of the problem. When you buy the number 1 recruiting class, these kids are promised, like, you're coming here to win. If they drop another game, like they have Arkansas this week, you know, in a neutral site game, a rivalry game, they lose to Arkansas, man, don't be surprised if you start seeing some guys jump in the portal. We already saw a bunch of drama with one of their star corners. He was liking tweets about how Jimbo's offense isn't any good. And then he was speeding around in his sports car in like a loaded parking garage, like drifting around. So like things are already starting to get kind of a little haywire. And these Texas A&M fans have very high expectations. Even though they haven't won a lot, they think they're at that upper echelon already. So that leash is shorter than people might think with Jimbo Fisher, and I think it all could come crumbling down this season.
Oklahoma sits at 4 right now, I believe. What is the ceiling for this team this year? I know you brought up earlier that you didn't think they were a championship team, but do you think they could potentially run the table and at least make the playoffs?
You know, I really do. I had kind of a little monologue on Not Another CFB Pod after seeing what I saw last game, and I know, again, it was Nebraska. But holding Nebraska to just 7 points, and those 7 points came off the scripted first drive where they brought out a bunch of stuff OU hadn't seen on film yet. They score right away, and OU never looks back. They score 49 unanswered, and that's with a missed field goal mixed in there. I think that kind of you could just tell the way that game went. It wasn't the Lincoln Riley thing where we just like bombed the ball deep. We ran the ball really, really well, over 300 yards rushing against this team. And the defense obviously was the main part that I needed to see to tell me, like, I know the offense can probably score enough points. We've got enough talent. Is the defense there? I think so. It's just this year, like I explained earlier, like you guys said, there's Georgia and then there's maybe Bama and Ohio State, and anyone that's in that 4 spot will get absolutely obliterated. But right now I kind of have that 4 spot going to OU. I think it could easily be USC too, because their schedule's so easy. But we'll see. But I really think OU's got what it takes to get to the playoff. I think they've got the best team in the Big 12 right now. So my expectation is to win the Big 12 first and then sneak into that number 4 spot and get absolutely sacrificed by Georgia on national TV for everyone to see. So that's where I think we're probably at right now.
Do you think, speaking of Georgia, and we'll go Georgia and Bama and the SEC, who in the conference that they play before they obviously, I think everybody knows they're going to meet up in the SEC championship.
Yeah.
Is there anybody that can trip one of these teams up and make it a lot more interesting, like Tennessee?
Tennessee's the one I was going to say for Georgia, just because that offense with Hendon Hooker can really light it up. It's just that Georgia's defense, that's basically an NFL defense. So can Josh Heupel have a good enough game plan? Because this team's going to have less talent. And even the offense, Brock Bowers and these guys for Georgia, stepping up in a big way, and they're really making it to where I don't even know if you can beat Georgia, but Tennessee is the one that sticks out to me. Maybe Kentucky. My fear with Kentucky is they're just not good enough on offense. I think the only way they win that game is to somehow turn it into one of those old school SEC, like 9-3 type games. And I just don't know if you can do that with the talent that Georgia has on offense. As far as Bama goes, man, I don't really see much in front of them. The only team I was thinking preseason was maybe A&M, if the hype was true. And right now it just does not look true. I like Bama to get there. And then if they meet in that championship game, I actually like Bama's chances in a 1-game scenario, which will make everything crazy, because then maybe Bama goes to 1 and Georgia would go to 2 in that case. So then, everything kind of flips on its head. We'll see. But there's not a whole lot in their way, but obviously there's always tricky spots in the SEC.
So you talked about Oklahoma potentially being the 4 seed sacrifice this year in the college football playoffs. How do you feel about 2026 when it's going to a 12-game playoff? If the 4th seed is already like a sacrifice, in your opinion?
Yeah, no, I think it gives us more meaningful games. I know there was kind of a controversial move that some people loved, some people hate. I actually like it just because we're going to get, at least right now, it looks like we're going to get a home playoff game. For most teams, all the teams that don't get a bye, the higher seed or the lower seed, I guess, would get a home game. That's going to be incredible, man. I can't even imagine like a game at Michigan or whatever, somebody's coming into Michigan and it's snowing because it's whatever, December or January even. And I think it's good for the sport. I don't know that we should ever expand to, the FCS level where there's, how many do they have? 32 or 16. So you start getting up there a little too high, in my opinion. I just think that now we're not going to hear so much complaining about that 4 seed, because the difference in the 4 seed and the 5 seed is a lot smaller to me than the difference between the 12 seed and the 13 seed. Because you're going to be looking at teams with 2 to 3 losses at that point. It's going to be easy to say, yeah, you lost, 2-3 times, whatever, you're out. Like, it is what it is. Let's play some ball. I like the way it's set up. I think we're going to have to see the product out on the field. I think, I do agree with the people who have the complaint that it's probably going to just be the same teams every year. That may be, but at least then we get a couple extra meaningful games along the way. I think it's good for the sport.
I completely agree with you. I don't really understand the people that are complaining about it. Obviously, the chances are likely that it's going to be the same teams, but at the same time, what have we seen the last couple of weeks with these upsets that have gone on? You never really know what's going to happen until the game's played out on the field. So we can sit here on this podcast and talk about it, and all the pundits can talk about it on TV. But at the end of the day, you gotta play the game, and
right.
We might see some upsets, we might not, but I'm definitely a fan of the expansion.
Yeah, give them a chance. Why not? Something crazy eventually is going to happen. It just hasn't yet. But the more games, the more chances we have for chaos. So I'm all for it.
All right, so next we're going to go into some matchups we picked for this weekend. I know you're kind of a gambling guy. You like to do the spreads and money lines and all that. So number 17, Baylor, it's traveling to Iowa State. I believe this is an early game. I could be wrong. Iowa State's favored by 2.5, which is a bit surprising to me. Personally, I think Baylor's just overall a better team. I know they lost BYU in overtime, and that kind of brought them down a few notches in a lot of people's eyes, but I still think they're a solid group. What do you think?
I agree. I like Baylor. I like Baylor in general, but my problem is anytime Vegas sets you up with these spots, like you said, I don't know why Iowa State should be favored here. But they are by 2.5. A lot of times that means you just take that 2.5. You take that -2.5. Iowa State's a tough place to play, man. Up in Ames, it doesn't seem like it, but those fans and being in the Midwest this last week, I can tell you, there's not a lot else to do in the town other than just going to the game and enjoying it, drinking some beers with your friends. It gets rowdy in there, man. And you're right, it is an early game, 11 a.m. And I think that tends to neutralize most crowds a little bit. But those Big Ten teams, man, they're not afraid to get out early and start drinking some Busch Light. So I think that's going to be a great environment. If I had to make a pick on this, I think I'd be on the Iowa State side -2.5, just because there's too many signs telling me to take Iowa State here. But I agree. I think Baylor's a really good team, and I wouldn't be surprised even if they drop this game that they're the team that maybe OU faces or potentially Texas in that Big 12 championship game.
Well, if there's one thing I've really learned recently betting is, you see these lines that don't look right.
Mm-hmm.
Vegas usually knows what they're talking about.
Yep.
Vegas is usually right. Not this time. I think I'm going to go Baylor. I would go Baylor money line on this one.
Yeah,
I like
I agree
it.
with Clack. Vegas is a big, dumb, stinky idiots, and I'm picking Baylor all the way. What do they know?
All right. Well, next we'll move on to the Clemson game. Number 5, Clemson is favored by 7 at Wake Forest. This game's tricky because my gut tells me it could be an upset with how well Wake Forest has been playing, and just how much of a dumpster fire Clemson's been last year and a half. But I don't think I could trust the Wake Forest defense to be able to stop Will Shipley from just running the ball all over.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll play it safe. I'll take Clemson money line because there is that chance that Wake Forest at home with that crowd and Sam Hartman at quarterback just absolutely goes off. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good one. I think it's going to be a sneaky, decent game. All these SEC or ACC, teams hate Clemson. So I really think that they're going to get Wake's best shot here. Sam Hartman back at quarterback. That obviously makes me happy. But I would think if I took anything here, it would be just Wake +7, +7.5, whatever you can get it at. Getting that full touchdown's pretty nice against, like you said, a team that's struggled on offense lately. Even though I don't love Wake's defense, I think that they keep them in this game just enough, Sam Hartman and the boys. Keep it close enough. Give me the +7, but I don't know that there's an upset here. I just think it's close.
This one's a tough one. Clemson's on a downturn from what they've been. I just don't feel like I can pick against them on this one. I'm going to go Clemson to barely cover in this one. I wouldn't be surprised if we end up getting a push in this one. That kind of seems par for the course for this kind of game. Wake Forest just did not look. Offensively they look good. Defensively, if you're going to give up 36 points to Liberty, you're going to give up a good bit of points to Clemson. Give me Clemson.
Yeah, I hate that I've agreed with Clack 2 for 2 so far, but I'm going to pick Clemson to cover. That being said, I did ask earlier who the most overrated teams in college football. I do think Clemson has got to be up there.
Yeah, they're sitting at
just
5.
not the number 5 team. They're not the 5th best team in the nation, and it's just one of those things where every year they I talked about this 3 weeks in a row here, but the second best team in the ACC is the 5th or 6th best team in the SEC. So I just I think Clemson's super overrated. But that being said, I think they cover. I just am not sold on Wake Forest, so I'm picking Clemson.
This next game is one that I know I said the spread for the Iowa State Baylor game confuses me, but number 24 at number 11 Tennessee. Tennessee's favored by 10.5 points. 10.5. And I know we overvalued Florida after they beat Utah, and they've looked kind of rough ever since, but I don't think I'm buying necessarily what the Vols are selling. I'll take Tennessee money line, but I'm not going to touch this -10.5 point spread.
Yeah, this spread confused me as well. And like I said earlier, that usually means take the side that you're surprised about, like Tennessee here. But I like Anthony Richardson. I like Hendon Hooker. I like both these quarterbacks, and I like this game to go up. So I actually took the over for my pick. I think it's over 61. So I think there's going to be a lot of points scored in this one. I think Richardson has a little bit of a bounce back. This is their first road game And a lot of times these teams will get up for that. And Neyland's obviously a pretty solid environment. I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. In the end, I think Tennessee pulls it out, and maybe they're right around that 10.5 number. But I really probably won't touch this one other than the over.
I don't think that it will be 10.5 at game time. I don't. I will go Tennessee money line.
Oh, interesting enough. I guess I'm just too much of a believer, or maybe I'm a hater. I'm picking Florida straight up. I think they have a bounce back. They won last week, but only by 1 point against USF.
3, I think, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, 31-28 against USF. So not a great showing. Like Anthony Richardson, after week 1, people were crowning him like a top 10 pick. And, I kind of bought into the hype too, because the more good quarterbacks, the better, in my opinion. But I think they kind of have a bounce back game, and I'm just picking Florida to win straight up, kind of shock the nation a little bit.
Yeah, I could be wrong, but I just feel like in a rivalry game like this, it's typically pretty close. I feel like it's been close the last couple of years. I mean, like I said, I don't really have anything to back that up, but I just feel like this game's usually a closer game. So minus 10.5 is a bit kind of weird to me. Next game is number 10 Arkansas at number 23 Texas A&M. I think the line is 1.5 or 2, basically just a pick'em game. I'm going to go with a better offense, which is Arkansas. Arkansas's defense has been kind of suspect lately, but I think offensively, with KJ Jefferson and Sanders running the ball, I think they just get the better of Texas A&M, even though they're on the road.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Arkansas as well. It being this game in Jerry's world, it's been an interesting environment every year. One year I was in Dallas when this game happened, and it was really interesting to see like the frat guys from each school kind of squaring up a little bit. It's a little bit chippier of a rivalry than I think it gets credit for, and I think part of it's because Jerry's world's just not the greatest atmosphere for like college football. It's a big pro stadium, and it's kind of far from the field, and it just doesn't have that same vibe as like a college stadium would. This is low-key a sneaky rivalry. I like Arkansas here too. I already said that I thought A&M was a little overrated, so if I say that, I can't exactly go with Arkansas, but I do think it's going to be a competitive game. I think a lot of people would look at this and say, well, Arkansas's looked better, so they're going to win. They might win, but it's going to be a tough game. The spread's close for a reason, but I'll go with the Razorbacks.
This one's tough. Arkansas didn't look good last week at all against Missouri State.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go A&M.
They can score points, though. A&M's defense is okay, but A&M just can't score at all. I mean, they were sputtering offensively last week. They ended up winning the game, but it was brutal to watch. So I don't
A&M with an upset.
Okay. I mean, Tyler.
Yeah. I got to pick Arkansas. I'm just, like you said, you said exactly what I was going to say, in that A&M offensively just has not convinced me that they can score enough points to outscore Arkansas. And they're another team that I don't understand, like, how they're still ranked. They have not looked good the past couple of weeks, and they've lost to an unranked team like week 1. I mean, they tied the biggest drop ever from like ranked to still being ranked. So I think they're going to lose. I think they'll finally be unranked. And then, like you said earlier, I think that this is a loss that's going to send a few shockwaves throughout the program a little bit. Yep. Like you might see a couple guys, jump ship. So yeah, I'm picking Arkansas.
Before we get to the Alabama game, I did want to sprinkle in a little Pac-12 into here. So number 15, Oregon is at Washington State. Oregon's favored minus 6.5 last I checked. I think they looked good last week against Baylor, but BYU. But I think BYU is another one of those teams that's kind of overranked after beating Baylor, and I'm nervous about taking Oregon to cover here. So, I mean, I'm just playing it safe this week with these money lines. So I'm going to take the Ducks money line.
Yeah, I'm kind of big on the Ducks, but I'm telling you, it's kind of one of those things too. I have access to like an app that tells me kind of what the percentages are as far as what everyone's betting. And anytime I see one like this where 80% of bettors are on Oregon -7, that makes me like the other side, just because, like we said earlier, Vegas tends to win. I'll take Washington State +7 at home just to keep it close. That's kind of a weird place to play. I think I was looking at the over earlier as well, just because Pac-12 after dark. It's not after dark in this case, but still kind of two of those teams that normally are playing late night. You just get up and it's just points. I think that probably happens. I think Oregon's improved, but I think Oregon is one of those teams that gets everybody from the Pac-12's respect and their best shot. So I think Washington State looks a lot better this week, and people forget they beat they beat Wisconsin in Madison earlier this year. It was an ugly game, low-scoring game, but they did get the W on the road. I think this team's maybe off people's radar, but maybe it should be a little more on. I'll just take them to keep it close.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'll go Oregon to cover. I think it'll be a slight cover in this one, maybe by 10.
Yeah, and then I kind of think Washington State's impressed me a little bit more than I thought they would, especially the week 1 win, right? That's their big win. Obviously, that's what's going to impress you and jump off the page. But they have been really up and down the last couple of years. I know, besides beating like Washington, which seems to happen quite a bit. No matter how good Washington is, that's just like that. That's the Iron Bowl, right? The Apple Cup.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to pick Washington State to cover. I don't think they're going to win outright because Oregon is just a better team, but I do think that'll be closer than people are giving credit for.
Oregon every year, though, I fall into this trap. They look good early on. Hell, I picked them to cover against Georgia, and we all see where that got me.
Good thing for you, they didn't look good early on.
Well, they always do this thing where, like, take away the Georgia game, but previous years, they'll start off really well, and they'll, like, kind of move up the rankings, and they'll have one of these letdown games or maybe a couple of them a year. And so I could see this potentially being the game that they just can't get it done on offense. And you never know which Bo Nix you're going to get.
Right.
But I'm going to still go with my gut and believe in them that they can somehow win this game. But I do see the other side of the argument where Washington State is, 3-0. And like you said, they went into Wisconsin and beat the Badgers. So wouldn't be surprised if there's an upset here. Moving on to the Bama game. Bama is favored by 40 points against Vanderbilt. I'm not the biggest fan of taking Bama to cover the points because last year they weren't all that great at covering the points, and this year they didn't cover the 20 against Texas. So I'll take them to cover against Vanderbilt because it's Vanderbilt, but definitely nervous about that.
Yeah, this is an interesting spot. Obviously, Bama at home. It always feels weird against Vandy because I know it's got to be hard to motivate your team. It's a lot like Kansas in the Big 12 usually is, where it's just like your team's just kind of like, oh, this is a given game. Like, we don't really have to get ready for this one. I'm sure it's the same way in the SEC. Vanderbilt, I think, has a little life on offense, especially this year, but I think their defense is bad. I guess if I went anywhere, I may go with this over. But who knows? I mean, I guess you got to take Bama minus 40, but it feels pretty bad. So I don't know, but I know Bama's going to win. That's all I know.
Yeah, it seems like Alabama. I agree with what Joe said. It seems like if Bama doesn't cover, it's always a garbage time touchdown coming up with a third-team defense, and then Nick Saban loses his mind.
And Twitter goes crazy too. Everybody's acting like.
I think it's going to be the situation like it is, but I think Bama covers barely. I'm going to go 56-14 tied.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, maybe a bold take, but I think this is the week that Bama exercises their offensive demons a little bit.
Bill O'Brien, you mean specifically?
Bill O'Brien, yeah, I guess specifically. I think that they put up a lot of points, and I think their defense has been very good all year. So I'm picking Bama to cover. And hey, I am 1-0 and getting the exact score after our game, like our score.
Yeah, that was impressive.
I did get it exactly right.
We were all close, but Tyler hit the nail right on the head.
What's your prediction for this week?
55-3.
Oh, I got to give a score prediction. I realized I didn't give mine. I'll go 65-14 or something, I guess.
Okay. I don't think I've ever heard of a team scoring 65, but we'll take it.
55 or 65?
We'll go 55. 65 is a little odd.
Maybe you could throw a safety in there somewhere. You can get there.
Well,
it's if Iowa week 1 can get 7 points without scoring a touchdown.
Yeah, 2 safeties in a field goal, man. You're in there.
Before we get out of here, I kind of wanted to ask you, PG.
Clack.
Oh, I just generally forget about Clack. Clack, go ahead.
Yeah.
What? What is the question? I already gave you mine.
He gave one, yeah.
Did it?
56.
Oh, I guess I forget about Clack too.
Wow.
50, so 42 points. barely
Are
covered.
there any other games this weekend besides the ones we mentioned that stand out to you?
There's yeah, we all can. I've got two, I think, honestly. One of them is Ohio State and Wisconsin. I like Ohio State to score a lot of points here, but look out, because if Wisconsin scores first and they kind of land that first punch, it might be a little interesting in that game. I mean, I don't think Wisconsin's very good this year, but like I said, they've got a great running back. If they land that first punch, it could get interesting. And then the only other one I thought about is Stanford at Washington. Washington had a big win last weekend, looking great over Michigan State. I think this is going to be a high-scoring affair. I'm actually liking the over in this one. I think it's just going to be a classic Pac-12 after dark. I think it starts 9:30 Central or something, so it'll be a good one to throw on late night.
Yeah, actually, Washington-Stanford was the one that I was going to bring up too. Just because
nice.
I have a good buddy of mine. He's a very proud Washington alum. He lives up there in Seattle. He got very blasted after the last game. He was at the game and got on, was talking to me. We're just playing some games late at night. He got very blasted, got on, was talking to me about how Michael Penix is a Heisman favorite now, and Washington's gonna make the playoffs. So I'm picking Stanford money line to win this, because every year Washington, anytime they have semblance of looking good, they immediately throw it away. So I think this is the week. I think Stanford's the team to do it, and I'm just picking Stanford to win straight up there.
Love it. Two good quarterbacks going at it in that one, or at least above average. So, like, anything could happen, honestly.
Yeah. And to his credit, Michael Penix has looked really good so far this year. But
he has. Going back to kind of your thoughts, I think the Wisconsin-Ohio State game, I want it to be a good game. But if you want to even have a chance of beating Ohio State, you have to kind of have that home crowd, and this game is unfortunately in Columbus. Mm-hmm. So I think Wisconsin could make it interesting, obviously, with Braylon Allen. He's an absolute stud running back for them. But they're going to need a big performance out of him to pull off the upset. But Ohio State struggled against Notre Dame, so they're not this juggernaut team that maybe some people may think they are. That might be a close game for a little bit, a couple punches traded, but definitely Ohio State covers the spread, I'm sure, on that one.
Well, Ohio State, too, is also a team that always seems to have one inexplicable, like, awful loss. And it's never just they lose close. Like, I remember 2017, 2018? They lost like 55-3. Well, they lost by like 50 points to Iowa one year, and then they lost to Purdue the next year.
Yeah, so Purdue beat down on them. Yep.
And so it's just there. I think there's going to be one game that's just an inexplicable loss. Is it Wisconsin? I don't know, but
might be Penn State. They play at Penn State this year. Obviously, I'm biased as shit about Penn State because I had two older brothers that went there. But I do think Penn State playing Ohio State at home, that could be an interesting game.
That's going to be a good one.
See, Joe, you're using too much logic. Penn State's too good of a team to be their like weird upset loss. It's going to be like Rutgers or something. So.
I don't know. Penn State, anytime they play in Columbus, can never pull off the upset, but they have had some magic a little bit at home.
Got some life in Happy Valley for sure.
Yeah, I don't really trust James Franklin, but I do like what I've seen from them finally able to run the ball, and then I'm a Sean Clifford believer. So
they embarrassed Auburn, so maybe Sean Clifford's back. I mean, maybe.
Oh yeah. It was a double whammy for me being an Alabama fan and a Penn State fan. Getting to see Auburn lose was a very joyful Saturday. But thank you all for watching tonight. Thank you, PG, for taking the time to join us. Now is your time to plug anything you got going on. You have a podcast?
Yeah, absolutely, man. First of all, thanks for having me on. It's been awesome. You guys are great. My Twitter is at Potato Gobbler. Pretty simple.
We got some time here. Can we hear the Potato Gobbler story? We have to. I couldn't let you leave without it.
Sure. So originally when I started getting on Twitter, I used my like full first and last name, and that's a fine idea and it's a good thing most of the time. But the problem is if you ever argue with someone on the internet, especially weirdos, they will like figure out, where you work. And like I had a guy like call the place I worked because he like lost an argument. And I was like, you know what? I'm over this. Like, when you're gaming and stuff, I was a big gamer at the time. I used, different names. You never used your first and last name. So I used a random name generator, and it came up with I think it was like Yam Gobbler, and I was like, well, I don't like yams, but I guess potatoes kind of similar or whatever, and I love potatoes, so Potato Gobbler. And then I started going by kind of like PG, and so the whole thing's kind of taken on a life of its own. But that's kind of how we landed on Potato Gobbler. Is just I was tired of people being weirdos, and so now like if people argue with me, I always go with like, you're upset at a guy whose like Twitter handle is Potato Gobbler. Like, you know, you already kind of lost in a way. Like it's hard to lose an argument when you're Potato Gobbler, I guess.
Yeah,
You should read the text. Joe was like, "Oh, I got a guest," and I was like, "You got a guy named Potato Gobbler?"
I was like, "I think I got a guest for this week," and they're like, "Who?" And I was like, "Potato Gobbler," and they're like, "Who the hell's Potato Gobbler?"
Yeah, man, it's been great. It's been really fun, and I feel like people have taken it well, and it's kind of became a meme of its own. So it's just kind of been organic that way. It's been fun.
Yeah, and then the last question I have for you that I kind of just thought of on the spot is, I know you do a little bit of betting. Do you have like a book or use like an app, or I don't know if we're all going to get in trouble here, but
I know, same. Yeah, so this is just hypothetical.
Hypothetical, of course.
Yep. So I live in a state where it's not legal to, not yet at least, to sports bet. So I use some sites online. If you Google, they're offshore is what they're called, offshore sports books, but it's all through the internet basically. And so the only tricky thing about it is at least most people, the way they deposit is through like Bitcoin or like a credit card. Like
that sounds sketchy as hell.
It is until you get your money in, and then you want to use a reputable site.
You've got like thugs showing up to your door with baseball bats.
Exactly. It's even funnier when you look into where these sites are based from, like freaking Antigua and freaking all
Nicaragua.
All these places you've never been to before. But anyway, there are some reputable ones out there. If you're in one of those states where it's not legal for you to sports bet, there's ways to do it. You have to go around a little bit. But one thing that might be fun that you might do, and it will save you some money more than likely, is just use the Action Network app. You can get in there and basically track your bets. And you could say, I want $10, which might be a unit for you, 1 unit on this spread. And you could just kind of track it that way. And that way you don't actually lose money, but you can still see like how you would have done. And that's kind of what happened to me, is I started doing really well doing that kind of thing and being like, I need to actually do this for real. And anyway, it kind of becomes the whole thing. But yeah, that's kind of how I got into it, at least.
Yeah, I know Clack and I, we're in Alabama, so it's not legal here. We do have a book, but I've been using Prize Picks. It's daily fantasy is what it's categorized as. So it is legal here. So I've been using that, and I've enjoyed it. But
yeah, I know about Prize Picks.
Yeah, I am jealous of some of these states that have, the Barstool DraftKings books.
Yeah, it should be coming to Oklahoma soon. We've already got casinos in place with the Native American tribes and things, so it's just a matter of time before we get it. But yeah, I use Bet Online and a site called Bovada.
I used to use Bovada too.
Yeah, and those are two of the more reputable ones I've found, and I think there's some other ones out there, but those are two of the better ones. That's mainly what I use, but it is good if you're going to actually sports bet to have more than one book, because you can kind of bounce around and see who has the best lines. Like I took a bet Thursday night, Virginia Tech money line, and on one side it was like -110, on the other side it's like +105. So you can kind of bounce around, and the only thing that sucks about that is you've kind of got money and floating in different places. But I say bet within your limits. Don't go crazy and bet thousands of dollars if you don't have thousands of dollars to bet, and just keep it fun. Even $1 bets are fun. You got something on the line, so don't be afraid to throw a $1 bet out there every now and then. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, we've all just completely outed ourselves in the last 5 minutes, so that's great.
We're hopefully the FBI never hears this one, but it is all hypothetical.
There's a knock at my door. No, I'm kidding. All right. Well, thank you again, PG, for joining us, and everybody who tuned in to watch tonight. Thank you all, and hope everybody has a great night and a great weekend.